Fucking Flintstones, man.
Who would have thought the combination of graphic dino carnage, a premise involving a wormhole, and lots of manly cliches is somehow the recipe for the perfect B-movie creation? Whenever it comes to something like this, you kinda know what the quote-unquote critics are gonna say. Too serious and not much fun because it's too serious, a Jurassic World Rebirth clone.
That's chaos theory.
And upon witnessing this gem of independent goodness, I can say those complaints are complete bullshit. You may be curious to why this is, because let's face it, when it comes to dinosaur movies, expectations tend to be low. They don't usually rise above the mediocre category, but sometimes the idea of you can't take this seriously is misunderstood. Look at something like Wishmaster. It contains scenes that were ridiculous. It made for a fun movie, but the issue was not being in on the joke. That and a painfully dull sequel. But I will argue this movie manages to take the plot seriously, while at the same time still knowing what it is. In other words, the exact opposite of Predator Badlands. Not gonna lie, I say plot loosely, more so what's needed. A team of soldiers dropped into a valley for classified reasons. It just so happens to be full of dinosaurs. You have the rookie soldier.
Shocking.
A woman they meet halfway through who could be a love interest.
Positively shocking.
A crazy Russian general you don't see till the end.
I almost couldn't comprehend.
And a premise about dinosaurs being brought there through, like I said, a wormhole, which they created and must be stopped.
Oh, I know what you were trying to describe.
At some point, the objective literally becomes pulling the plug.
You must go in and pull plug.
What, you thought I was kidding? And you do have a good amount of elements that seem to be pulled straight out of Jurassic World. Corporate-looking bad guy in a white t-shirt, there because he needs to be. Even the scene on the boat with Spinos, it's very hard not to compare them. But that's kind of the whole thing. The guy in the white shirt is only in a few scenes, not throughout the whole movie, acting like he isn't a bad guy.
What are you implying?
And opposed to a ridiculous set piece on the boat that probably isn't even accurate to how Spinos act, if you can imagine, it's just a nice scene. By nice, I mean exposition we don't care about, and a showcase of the film's not very good effects. We'll get back to that. But given this comes after a big cinematic moment and followed by basically the climax, having a slower section on the river actually fits in nicely. That's one of the, I would assume, criticisms. The pacing in this movie is genuinely taken seriously. So if you really look at it as B-movie quality, I guess that may be an issue. But again, it really is how you choose to look at it. You can over-examine stuff, criticize the plot being too cliche, complain about the effects that are clearly not gonna be that good. And you can also count down the days to Jurassic World 5. Or is it 8? If you go in expecting anything else, let alone back when this came out in the theater during a limited showing, all I can say is it's kind of your fault. I'm not trying to knock the idea of reviewing the movie, but if that's your mentality, it may as well be an Asylum movie. It's not going to be high quality stuff, that's kind of a given, but of all the monster, sci-fi, or in a lot of cases dinosaur movies, this is about as good as they get. And the reason why isn't even that complicated. In fact, it's clear as day. Nothing's done that bad, most of it's about average, but a few things are excelled at. I'm not gonna keep comparing it to Rebirth. I don't think many people really like that movie, but I will say it had worse pacing, that's factual, and it really isn't superior in any way, except maybe effects. And even that kinda sucked. The pacing in this is actually commendable. I have no issue saying that. That's where the it's too serious argument comes in. But at the end of the day, no good comes from lazily throwing action scenes at you. You gotta have some downtime. This is a movie that exceeds 2 hours. That may be an issue too. But believe it or not, when the action comes in, well, it's good. That's what I meant by it excels at a few things. When the shit hits the fan, for whatever reason, it has the right effect. I think it's partly because every scene is a little different. The opening bit isn't so much action heavy, but the way you see the raptor silhouette in a way that you could almost miss it is a definition of less being more. Lots of scenes see these little raptor-like dinos attacking, but it's never without reason, just to throw something else in, and each one concludes in a way that has some kind of effect. Honestly, it's the best thing about the movie. They're simply fun to watch. The scene in the bunker being a highlight that's really well done, even as the main character, Keyes, not making it after a pretty gruesome injury, and the climax with 2 T-Rexes, lots of raptors, multiple character fatalities, is not only an exciting payoff, it's also really unique. I mean, look at this slow motion shot. I don't usually praise that kind of thing. I'm not a huge slow motion fanatic, but I never expected this kind of ending. Yeah, you don't get into the narrative, you don't really care what's going on, but who would have expected the movie would conclude the way it did? I guess what I'm trying to say is when something happens, it's really fucking fun. But that's not all it is. Commonly seen in movies like this, a relatively big cast of individuals, ideally most of, if not all of them, don't make it. Usually a predictable process, easy to foresee, but in this case, nobody dies until the halfway point. The result of this is each one has an impact. I'm not saying they're the most fascinating specimen, but it's enough so when somebody gets killed, you do kind of care. Let's not forget the movie is quite violent. The first death is by no means tame. A lot of these scenes involve sacrifice, at one point begging not to be left behind, and it's kind of amazing how nobody is treated like an afterthought. They may not be memorable, but they have rebirth beat, no question about that. It's enough that when you watch the movie, you may at least get invested. For what it is, it's the right balance, that's about the face of it. But the thing that got my attention wasn't even that, it was actually the overall look. If you expect the movie to look good, again, why are you here? But what Primitive War does do really well is it has a unique style. I don't quite know how to explain it. It's another example of the movie realizing what it is and essentially working with that. You get a lot of scenes when the lighting is used effectively, creating the right mood, and the camera angle when they're running away may look a bit cheap, but it is a standout moment. I mean, look at this scene right here, the herd showing up, the knife in its eye. It looks intimidating, it's terrifying. In a way, it defines the movie. And going back to the slow motion bit at the end, that's genius, that's artistic, that's a fundamental understanding of the movie's limitations and its potential. The shot right here of the skeleton makes for another memorable scene, standing out due to its range. I may be getting too deep into this, but when you really think about it, that's why this works. The combination of the looks, the chaos, and the mandatory character development leads to a dinosaur movie that really is all it needs to be. It even has a decent soundtrack, a few Creedence songs thrown in. Suppose they must be cheap. I kinda love the way it incorporates Run Through the Jungle. I will say the T-Rex biting sound effect constantly took me out of it.
That kills the mood.
And occasionally some moments don't work for relatively obvious reasons. After Keyes gets brutally attacked, we have him supposedly writhing in pain, but he's clearly not. That's honestly hard to miss.
Grab a couple of poles. Carry him back to the research station for evac.
And even though Logan's sacrifice did feel warranted, the bad effect takes you out of it completely. They could have so easily just not shown that. He was already dead, it didn't matter, and given how literally every other death is handled, I don't know why they thought it looked okay here. The amount of creativity during the climax as they drop off one by one is kind of amazing. And also pretty terrifying, but a few scenes do somewhat drop the ball. I won't deny there could have not been so many Jurassic Park imitations. I mean, the Rexes are mad about their dead baby. It's very similar. Already brought up the boat ride, that scene's okay. Maybe we didn't need another song there. I'll get back to that in a second. But the conclusion with the dinos in a worldwide setting is a bit too far in the JW direction for me. I know in this case it's just the ending, it's not an expensive franchise promising something that will never come, but I just want to stop thinking about that. The question you may have thought is it too long? And I don't think so, but maybe a couple things could have been cut. I don't mean anything big, it's not meant to be an hour-and-a-half movie, but back to the boat ride, I don't think we needed another song there. All that said, I have no real issues with the pacing, but given the reputation they knew this movie would get, no matter what they did, maybe not add in stuff that really isn't needed, even if it's not that big. The only real problems are the limitations of the B-movie, and in reality, those aren't really problems. If it does everything right, everything it can do to be good, not lazily thrown together like most Hollywood movies, I believe that should be considered. A satisfying balance, taking the plot seriously enough, knowing exactly what it is, and it's sure as shit way better than the last dinosaur movie that came out this year. In fact, it's still ahead by 6. Just think about that. A movie that's never gonna be properly credited, a B movie, is still ahead. That says it all. Obviously, it's correct to be, but it still underrates the movie, and similar to what I say quite often, you really can't go by these reviews. I'm not saying it will never lead you in the right direction, a lot of times I will agree, but it's kinda like an IGN review. There's bias. In this case, if you want a fun dinosaur movie that isn't just a fun dinosaur movie, Primitive War is the film to check out. A bombastic monster flick with soldiers, a fucking wormhole, lots of cliches. It's just a fun ride that knows what it is, and no amount of male gaze-hating sequels can hope to outdo that. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please share it if you can. I know that can't be expected. But you can like the video, that's free. Subscribing is an option too, as is commenting down below, literally anything that helps the algorithm. And since said algorithm is broken, recommendations don't work either. That's why hitting the bell is imperative, or you probably won't get notified. I'm the analyst, and remember kids, fun and serious can go together. It's not very common, but it can.